Good morning and welcome to Mental Health Matters Office Hours. This is the show where we tackle all things workplace wellbeing. And if you're here for your self-development or you want to learn a little bit more academically, this is the place, because we have the leading professionals and practitioners in the field to talk about all the topics and really unpack the issues that are going on. Today we have Yinka Adesina, and she's going to be talking to us about intersectionality when it comes to career transitions. This is something we don't talk about enough because there are so many different factors that can affect people that sometimes a closed mind or a mind which is brought up in one particular cultural landscape only is just not able to see. So let's head over to the main studio. Yinka, welcome to Mental Health Matters Office Hours. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's absolutely great, and yeah, I'm really happy to be here today.
And this is a topic we need to address. We've been doing a lot recently when it comes to understanding cultural sensitivities and how to be more inclusive, and there's so many of the basics that actually are not being done. And that's your area of work. So do you mind sharing, first of all, your own career journey, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a career coach by profession, and essentially I work for Leanne University, and where I support lots of students, specifically underrepresented students as well, in their careers when it comes to developing that, understanding a sense of who they want to be in the world of work, but also supporting those who are changing careers as well. So I will see anyone from the age of 18 all the way to beyond 60. So it really varies. So a lot of the different factors that impact our careers, I get to see that on a day-to-day basis.
Wow. What a great career.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking that.
Career as well. Now, to cut to the chase, something that we almost get in trouble for, and we've had discussions like this before, we will use technical terms. Title of this show is Understanding Intersectionality, or we've used the word. And we're going to have audience members, I know, who are going to be like, oh, that's got nothing to do with me, I don't know what that means. But I think it is important to use these technical terms and use them correctly. So, Yinka, can you please define what we mean by intersectionality and maybe give us some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll do my best, but it's based on the work of a brilliant academic called Kimberly Crenshaw, and she's the one that actually coined and termed the phrase intersectionality. And it's in recognition that actually, particularly for minoritized populations and individuals, that actually we have lots of different factors of our identities which impacts our ability to have agency over a lot of things that we do. And so because of this oppression and discrimination that's based on the back of that, things affect us all differently. So, some individuals may be thinking, actually, I don't really, intersectionality has nothing to do with me, but actually in certain scenarios, maybe age is one of them that could be impacting you, as well as class, as well as ethnicity, immigration status, health, status, if you've got a disability, if you're the first in your family to maybe go into certain sectors as well. So if you broaden that out a little bit more, so that is really what the intersectionality is. It's more so looking at things from a lens of, how they all impact individuals when they're facing oppression and discrimination.
Oh my goodness. And that's so beautifully described.
Yes, it really is.
So beautifully described. Because just as you were talking, it's almost like we were talking with Dr Joanne Du, who talks about how the Chinese culture, for example, is very social orientated and collective, community based. The Western culture, very individual. And so what we may not realize is, coming from, say, a Chinese upbringing, I might sit there and say, oh, I can't make that decision because it's not for the good of the group. But in a Western context, that's not actually helpful. And then I sit there and go, oh, why was I passed over for that promotion? And get really resentful and angry about it. When actually there's something more to be uncovered.
Absolutely.
That's so important. And those barriers also, or those challenges maybe, they become more prevalent, especially when you're trying to change careers and make different transitions. So what have you seen in your practice?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a range of things in my practice, and I think you're absolutely spot on around actually some of the different cultural contexts and experiences of individuals, because when you're making a career change or career transition, it's not just about you specifically. If you are if you're a primary caregiver, for example, if the culture is very much actually if you're making that career change, we're all making that career change with you, right? There's that consideration. So actually, when I'm coaching clients, I often have to work out who else's voice is in the room. It's not just about what the client actually wants, it's also actually who else will be impacted by making this change.
Okay.
So much more in the household, but also beyond as well, because if we're talking about, discrimination and factors of oppression, actually what are the ripple effects that might disturb the current power balances or dynamics that you may be involved in as well.
Oh, I love that. Whose other voices are in the room?
Yeah, so interesting.
That's-
I wouldn't necessarily consider that.
Not in careers.
Yeah,
Especially
exactly.
because it's one of those things that I think is relatively common to therapy in the sense of you're always a bit like, whose voice is that's telling you all of those things?
Yeah.
Is it yours? Is it your dad's? Is it so that's a very common conversation there.
Yeah.
Not in relation to career
Yeah.
at all. And yet that's a huge life event, and of course it's going to be impacted by everything.
Yeah, it makes sense when you say it. Yeah, definitely.
Why don't we say it more often?
I know, exactly right. Wow. So intersectionality can lead to beliefs about the self as well. So, and those beliefs can become barriers. How do you support somebody who perhaps holds themselves back because they don't believe that they can do something, rather than it being about the accessibility or their perception of inaccessibility of opportunity?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question, and something again I go back to, why, or where is that thought sort of coming in? And a lot of the time, sometimes it can be what they're seeing. So this is where we go back to some of those psychological theories, and we think about social cognitive sort of theory, and actually what's the social learning that's been absorbed here to shape that perception that actually I can't go into that particular arena or field, right? And then, on the flip side of that, there's also the individuals I support who are actually going into spaces where it hasn't actually existed for that long. So because they've not necessarily seen the career doesn't mean actually they can't pursue it as well. So it's almost understanding what's driving that perception that you can't, you don't think you can go into those careers. So is it the self-limiting beliefs?
Yeah.
Or is it actually due to experiences that you've had as well? Because actually if you've had a experience that's not been so great from several bosses within a particular sector, right, you might build up that thought pattern that actually I don't think this particular career is for me based on my experiences. So for me, I always think it's important to make sure that we're not invalidating people's experiences, and it isn't just, I can't do this because I'm not confident. No, this could be based on the evidence that you've built up about this as well. So it's important to sort of work that out too.
And
So interesting.
use the word evidence there, because it is evidence they've come with.
Yes.
They know that hasn't worked for them, and that's the experience. And of course, one of the common questions to ask is, are you leaving the field or leaving the manager?
Well, yeah, and that's a really good question as well, isn't it? It's for someone to think about,
And you have to have the time to delve into that.
100%. You have to work out what's the root cause that's driving that thought.
Do you know what? We need you in schools.
Yes.
Well, we are there in schools. We are there in schools, but it's the time of the resources.
I don't know about our audiences, I don't know about our team, but in my career experience in schools, we got sat in front of a computer, do a test, and then every single one of us that I asked, we all got prison officer. That's the career. We don't want to be a prison officer. Wow. I think there was a drive to get more prison officers that year.
Yeah, that could be one part of the picture, but yeah, very interesting for sure. So, there is the idea that actually when it comes to career coaching and advice, that it's just about the career. No, it's much more broader than that. The impact, it connects to well-being, it connects to finance, it connects to, like social psychology as well, how individuals are impacting their communities. So, the remit is much more broader than just the job or just the career.
Oh, that is something to just leave you hanging on there for a moment. We are keeping Yinka with us. We'll be back just after this.
Navigating today's workplace is tough.
Toxic employees, endless drama, a lack of motivation. We've all been there.
But fear not, we are here to help. My name is Leanne and I'm a chartered psychologist.
My name is Al and I'm a business owner, and together we dig into the scientific and commercial secrets behind great workplace cultures in Truth, Lies and Work.
A no-nonsense, award-winning psychology podcast brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network. We explore practical strategies for building a great workplace.
We debunk buzzwords and bring you the very best advice around finding and keeping great people From personality tests.
Personality tests they're mostly bollocks. I don't know what kind of language you do on your podcast. I don't know if people know this, but the man who wrote the Wonder Woman comics is the person who invented the disc.
When more flexible working became a norm, you no longer hurt your career prospects by being the one person who worked flexibly.
All the way to avoiding high turnover.
We recruit and promote people to managerial roles based on their technical skills, not their people skills. This is a very fundamental problem we have, which we haven't directly tackled.
From toxic-free cultures,
interventions for the individual are only half the answer. Systemic change is the other half.
to sustainable growth.
Thinking beyond just paying somebody a good salary, I think is super necessary now. We have to offer so much more than that.
We have got you covered.
So join us on Tuesdays and Thursdays where we help you to simplify the science of work and build amazing workplace cultures.
Hi there, I'm Dawn Livingston, your host on the Transcend and Succeed show. Join me Fridays at 2 p.m. Central for limitless inspiration and ways to help you transcend your limitations. Tune into the Achieve TV network and the Voyage to Vitality channel. Transcend and Succeed show, right here on A360 TV.
Struggling to remain positive. Feel like you naturally lean toward pessimism. Let's try this. Be the interior designer of your own life. Imagine you're redesigning a house. So the step one would be strip everything away. No decoration, no wallpaper, no lights, just an empty space. And see it for what it truly is. Then we get to step number 2. Now, consciously choose what to bring back in. What will make this a good place to be? Okay, now that you understand the concept, let's apply this to your words. Okay, so step 1 would be clear the space. So remove the words you normally use to describe your life, especially the ones that frame things negatively. Now, what's left? Just observe for a second. Try to see what's happening. The tip here is to be descriptive and forget your judgmental part. Then we get to step number 2, which is once you've done that, you can start redecorating, and this time with more thoughtful, uplifting, or simply more accurate words. And with that, you change the way you experience life. Instead of calling it a bad day, what if it's just a rainy day? That small shift leaves room for it to still be an amazing one. So try using neutral language to describe your day to day. See how it shifts your perspective.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters Office Hours, where we're talking to Yinka. Such a fascinating discussion about intersectionality within the workplace. So how can you start rewriting the narrative and showing that anyone can do any job that they put their mind to? Is it just a case of greater visibility, or how would you approach that?
That's an interesting question as well, especially around narratives. And I think what's interesting to me is around the any jobs. Now, I think it's important to have an element of reality or realism within that.
True.
Because actually, to become a pilot, for instance, you need to have specific psychological profiles in order to
and lots of money.
That too, right?
Good point.
So actually, I think it's always worth, contextualizing that a little bit more to say, actually, if you are in the workplace and you're trying to do another job or another role, what's driving that, right? And then understand the reality behind that. But in terms of the narrative, I think what's really important there is that it isn't just about visibility. I'd say it's more so in having an in-depth understanding about what it is that you actually have to offer any workplace.
That's beautiful.
So in positive psychology, we talk a lot about strengths, lots about meaning, purpose and values, but actually I say it's really important to actually have a sense of actually what do I bring to whatever environment that I'm in. So is it that actually my empathy skills are incredible, right? So whatever opportunity or workplace that I'm in, that's something that I want to be utilizing a lot of the time. Or is it that, you have a strength in bringing people together? Right, so having an understanding as to that strength or that quality about you, and understanding the different contexts that you use it, can actually ground you in your narrative, so that then it's much more compelling when you're expressing that, whether it's for a job interview, whether it's for an appraisal, or an annual development review. So that, for me, when it comes to having a narrative, it's important to understand what it is that you bring, and then understand how you can then position that based on maybe the context or the sort of the frames of a particular role.
Yeah, God, that makes so much sense.
Really does, and that's something that I think people don't do enough. And I think it's something that people have to be taught.
Yeah.
To do, because
to recognise their strengths, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
To recognise what you as an individual are bringing to that role, which maybe other people aren't, because we're almost so conditioned to, I think, be in the job description, whatever that job description told us it was.
Yeah.
And we might be in that role going, but I'm doing all of these other things.
Yes.
And it won't be visible unless unless you point it out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Big, that's huge.
So interesting. And what extra training or support have you seen that has been successful in encouraging not just diversity by success in integrated organisations?
Oh, I think I've seen several, and there are some organisations out there that are, when it comes to sort of diversity and inclusion and really embedding that within a culture, they're really sort of ahead with that. But I'd always say that it really starts from the senior sort of buy-in. I think that's something that's really, really important. If you don't have that, that power sort of behind whatever intervention that you're doing, it can sometimes not be as effective as you would like to. And so this is where we go from sort of being surface level and really get into the in-depth sort of buy-in, because it sort of rings true across different interventions across an organisation. But some of the ones that I've seen that really helps and that really sort of makes a difference is sort of, focusing on your emerging talent. Right, because a lot of the times, I think sometimes with diversity and inclusion, a lot of the time can be focused on the executive level, absolutely. But actually, do we know if the individuals at the earliest stages are in the right roles to then actually be open to them going up the hierarchical chain?
Yes.
Because sometimes that's actually what is the barrier.
Yes, because the hierarchical chain for that role may not suit that person, whereas they might be able to do the role itself absolutely brilliantly, but then they get promoted and suddenly the whole skill set changes. Never thought of that actually that almost is a systemic thing.
There you go. Right. And that's what we're interested in, right?
Yeah, it really is. And I think what you've done, Yinka, just in this very short conversation that we've had, and I would, we want you back. But what you've done is you have shown the complexities of something that I think too many of us think we can solve quite superficially, which kind of brings me to my next question of that influence, that encouragement, that visibility could start young. You can have children's programs where you've got a pilot of different nationalities, and that's great. However, what you pointed out so rightly, you need other skills to be a pilot. You need to have that reaction time. You need to have eyesight. So as many East Asian pilots as I would see on television, my eyes are never going to do it. So, and then that's setting me up for all kinds of heartbreak as well, if that's...
Yeah,
and exactly. I never considered that.
Yeah, so I'm, as a coach, I definitely always want whatever my client wants. But that's the starting point, right? But also, I think that's where having that really that in sync relationship with your client is really important, so that where you can actually say, "Hey, I love that you want this, but have you considered that as well?" Yes. So that we're not going too far in a direction that actually could lead them to sort of crash, and then they leave with disappointment.
Yes, because really sometimes, and this isn't necessarily intersectionality, just practical challenges may not suit that person. I remember one of our charity trustees. She always wanted to be an air hostess. She's too short.
Right.
That's it. She's too short.
Yeah.
She's brilliant and would be a fabulous air hostess. She just can't reach the overhead lockers.
And that happened to me when I was at school. We had careers advice, you know, at 18, and I wanted to be a police officer. And they looked into it, and I was an inch too short.
Wow.
Yeah. So you know, I might have been a great police. In fact, I probably wouldn't have. But you know, it stopped my career aspirations right there before I could even go anywhere with it.
And that has actually nothing to do with discrimination or anything like that. It's just certain jobs need a certain
just is what it is.
Safety or whatever. It's so much more complex, and I think we oversimplify this too much. So with regards to that, can a community itself become a bit resistant to somebody breaking out?
Oh, 100%. And in my work on a daily basis, well, not daily, but a regular occurrence is, you know, particularly for students who may be the first in their family to go to university.
Yes.
Or maybe even outside of that, the first in their family to go into a specific field. Yeah. And for example, you know, you've grown up around a family of doctors, and then you now want to become an artist, for example.
Oh, yes.
Right, exactly. So if you think about some of the conversations that might occur in that sort of, you know, environment, right? That's a lot that the individual has to think about and worry about before they're even making that development into that career, right? So, you know, in terms of communities that you have to sort of warm up around to the ideas of maybe careers that you want to have. And again, if you think about cultural factors as well, there's a reason why they might be coming from that angle where they're saying, actually, I'm not sure if that's the right career for you to go down because of their experiences and what they've seen. So it's important to recognise actually that might be the family's sort of story or the family's sort of awareness of what careers exist, but it's also important for the individual to understand that actually this is still a choice that you can make. So it's up to you. If you want to go down a different route, then actually tap into the communities that reaffirm that actually there's a way to sustain yourself in this career, all right? That there's a way that you can have just as much as, you know, status in one aspect as other careers as well, but find those professionals that you can sort of show the proof of so that you can show that back to the community to say, hey, have you considered that actually so-and-so is doing this, even though they went to a completely different area?
Yes. And I think relating to that, again, is another oversimplification. When you hit some of those community barriers, it's very easy to, I guess, take on the narrative that somebody gives you. So just a personal example, I entered a pageant contest in the 90s when I was 17. My mum tried to discourage me. She said, you're not going to win because you're Chinese. And now I took that as a visual aesthetic thing, but now having had all of these discussions going in the field that I'm in, I believe it was more driven by the fact that I'm Chinese Malay and Malaysia was a colony, which means that now if you're raising your head above the parapet in a Western world, that was never done, because now you're putting yourself out there to be absolutely shut down. So I don't think it was aesthetic. Now I reflect, it was deeper.
Yes.
But we don't know to have that conversation, especially when you're 17.
Yeah.
Exactly, you're not necessarily going to understand that nuance.
No.
And you might have taken that as a real...
Well, I did. Took it as an aesthetic thing. Which then shapes everything.
Of course, your confidence and everything, the way you view the world.
And so, I mean, how do we unpack that nuance?
Oh, I mean, I think there's several things, but I think communication is always first. And one thing that I'm very big on, as you know, someone who's the first in my household as well to go to university, is understanding the cultural, historical significance behind certain opinions. Right, so maybe for example, when my mum first came to the UK, you know, for her it was more so just get any job. Right? Do what you need to do to survive, right? Especially from a working class background. And so actually if there's certain careers that I'm saying, I'm thinking about going into, there's a reason why she might say no to that. Because, you know, from her experience, what's really important is that you can sustain yourself, and does this career allow you to do that, right? Do you get, you know, some of the security that she maybe didn't have, right? So it's not always as simple as just, you know, parents or community saying no just for the sake of it. There's often a deeper layer to why they're saying that. So I think it's important that whoever is experiencing not necessarily the rejection but the no's, to work out that actually they're coming from a place of care a lot of the times. It's coming from a place of love. So it's important to recognise that.
And once you recognise that, I think you're more able to ask. ask the question, because then the no at face value may not actually be the real meaning, and then it then actually opens up a conversation.
Right, exactly.
Oh gosh, yes. So it's like therapy here. Yinka, you're staying with us. We'll be back just after this.
And just make a list of all the different things you're doing. And if you can, over kind of 2-3 weeks, the percentage of your time you're spending on them. What you're really doing there is essentially your own job analysis. You're looking at the tasks that you're doing frequently and how long it's taking you. What you should be able to do then is look at that list and go, what do I actually want to be doing and what do I not want to be doing? Or what could we maybe get in some other help that is maybe doesn't need your experience at this point to come in, and the tasks that they can do. So you're almost crafting your perfect job.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters Office Hours. We are talking to Yinka about intersectionality in the workplace and all the things that we might face in the workplace. And this has already been such an eye-opening discussion. If you're just tuning in now, please take it back. You really want to be listening to Yinka. As I said at the start, if you're here to learn a little bit more about what intersectionality is, if you're here to develop your own sense of self, if you're here to just learn because somebody else is going through something, this is the show for you. We are bringing you experts who are so experienced in their field, and these conversations are in depth as well. So thank you, Yinka, for being here and sharing your vast knowledge. Now, you work as well within career transitions. Yes. And what might be defined as a transition? Is that just going from one career field to another, or is it a little bit more nuanced than that? And I think I'm learning it's more new. It's going to be more nuanced. And what problems have you seen in your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So career transitions, it's definitely about changing fields, but it's also about changing jobs. It's also about returning as well into the workplace.
Yes.
So, if you've had care responsibilities, maybe life has happened, right? You need to be out of the workplace for whatever reason, as it does, right? Then that transition back into the workplace as well forms part of that. And actually, there's a bit of a distinction sometimes between career transitions and career change. So sometimes with career transitions, it can be a forced transition. So if an organisation is having to conduct a restructure, for example, whereas a career change is more so internally driven. So that could be, maybe you were in one career for a moment and maybe, you've identified that actually the role doesn't give you as much meaning or purpose. And now you want to find something that's a bit more fulfilling, or you want to use your skills in a different way. That is also under the umbrella of career change as well.
That in itself can confuse people, because what they may not realise is they might come to you, I guess, saying, oh, my work has told me I need to retrain or I need to re-interview for my position, and they have the struggles there. But actually, if they'd seen it as a career change, we might work out that they really wanted to do all of those new things that they were doing, but it's the wording that's being used that can be really confusing. That's quite a big thing, and I'm glad we're having this discussion, because people out there might be already thinking, oh, wait a minute, no, that's a career change that I'm going for. And I love your point about coming back to the workplace as well, and which leads me on to my next question of the implicit biases that organisations may have. And I guess the most obvious is the female coming back to work after having a child and suddenly is expected, no, you should stay late, you need to be part of this. If you're not there, you won't be in that discussion for the promotion.
Absolutely. So that's something that I've unfortunately had conversations around. And I remember actually speaking to an academic who was getting treatment for cancer and was worried about their promotion. Gosh, so that it's these are really people's careers are really important to them, and it goes without saying, right? But if you're in an environment where there are certain expectations that actually don't align with what you need, then sometimes this can throw up a lot of sort of emotional sort of conflict, is kind of what I'd call it. And sometimes the career coaching actually isn't the right space to sort of deal with some of those those really sort of heavy conversations. And so this is why I always, recommend, if you are finding that, certain aspects of the career is really, draining you, or, you're questioning your sense of worth as well, and self-worth, really important that you get support from a therapist as well. So like I mentioned, with career changes, lots of thoughts and, feelings that naturally occur within that, but it's important to recognize actually when things are just, being taken a little too far.
Yes, I never even considered actually illness, long-term illness, and how that, again, oversimplification, but that's so key, because when I talk to people who work in the cancer field, you have to make appointments. You have to, there might be weeks where you just can't perform at your best because of your treatment. If you're caring for someone, you might also have to take time off and everything, and that necessitates change. And probably necessitates change that maybe you didn't even want, but your body's just gone.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
That's
and then
hard.
After having coped with all of that, then trying to get back into the workplace and make that transition is very, very hard.
And be fine.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So how can you encourage access to professional networks?
Now, that's one of my favourite topics when it comes to careers, because a lot of the times people have someone in their network that they can actually already reach out to, that perhaps they can get some insight from, even if it's not necessarily to land the job that they want. So when it comes to professional networks, it's something that I recommend people have a look in their networks, already existing networks. Have a think about who you've spoken to recently, or someone that you haven't spoken to in a while, but actually you've seen that maybe they're in a particular area or company that sounds interesting, and reach out to them. And so LinkedIn is a really great way to build those social networks, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that speaks about it, but it really is effective. I promise, I've used it. I myself used to be in HR and recruitment and changed careers to become a career consultant and career coach. So yeah, that's definitely something that helped me. But to build up those professional networks as well, it's important that you're around the people that are in the spaces that you want to be in. So this is where I say you're networking in person and actually attending events is something that's really important, so that you expand those professional networks. And again, not necessarily going in there with, oh, I want to get this, or I have to speak to this person, but actually see it as a chance to connect and commune with others as well, and have that, enriching conversations, or even off-the-cuff conversations that you didn't expect as well. So I think it's important to sort of cultivate those spaces and put yourself out there to access them.
I really like that, and I'm sorry, just to interrupt, but just to pull on LinkedIn. I know it can feel really awkward sometimes because you haven't seen that person for ages, and suddenly it's like, oh, you're in the field I want to go into. Hi! A cheeky thing that one of my clients does, they just go on to LinkedIn, wish them happy birthday. That's the first one. Just say hello first. Then they make more contact afterwards, so you can do it that way. I personally don't mind. I don't mind if someone just comes straight up to me and goes, oh, you're doing this, could you help me? Because at least I haven't got the time to faff about with happy birthday. What do you want? But I think you're right, just reach out in whatever way feels comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And happy birthday is great, but like a comment as well.
Yes.
Like a post, reshare a post, and generally be positive for others and what they're achieving as well. I sometimes find that actually when if people have put up milestones, actually just recognizing that they've achieved something great can also build positive connections even outside of trying to network for a job.
And I think that's a much nicer way of connecting with people, because you are more compelled then to share and reshare, and that conversation happens organically. Plus you end up, I guess, whoever you've liked or commented under that conversation that ensues, it might be the person who's right for your tribe rather than the one where you've just gone up to them and going, oh, can you help me? That's brilliant. No, that's really helpful. Am I sorry? No, I've just interrupted you.
No, that's fine. So, if you're transitioning into a different job or a different type of career, is masking ever a good solution?
Oh, Oh, that is such a tough question. And like deep down personally, I would prefer for no one to mask. That's just my, you know, in terms of humanity, you are who you are.
Yeah.
Great, just be you, right? But we have to contextualize things, right? So if, for example, you really need to survive for whatever reason, maybe you need to get like a job quite quickly to, you know, sustain yourself, then actually if masking is what you need to do, fine. But I will caveat that with a very big but. Be mindful of what you might have to do in order to continue masking because of the energy depletion that actually is required to do that. I think there's a term called emotional labor, and actually if you're engaged in masking, a lot of the times you're taking a lot of cognitive load on the back of that. So be mindful that if you are going to mask, that actually is there a space for you where you can energize yourself as well. So be in environments and communities where you're being affirmed, being reaffirmed and positively affirmed. So that's what I'd mention there. However, you know, if you are in a space where actually you can see that if you were to unmask, that actually nothing would happen because you're in a psychologically safe environment, then go ahead. Right, right, and that's the ideal. Right, that's what we need. That is, and we need more of that because a lot of the time when people are having to mask, it's impacting so many things. By the end of the day, you're exhausted from work, not just from doing the job itself, but actually all the performing aspects of the masking that you have to do. So you know, if you want a little more energy in your tank after you signed off, you might want to shy away from masking. But if that's what you have to do, then by all means, do what you need to.
And that's really nice, like almost give you permission to unmask. And that's probably really relevant for people maybe who are, you know, neurodiverse, who live their life masking. And actually, if they can find a role in which they can just go, actually, I'm just going to be myself and feel safe enough to do that, then that's going to just change their life, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really lovely.
And one thing I just wanted to quickly add to that is that if you're not quite sure if you can sort of be yourself, because sometimes it can feel a little bit like cheesy and it's, you know, but actually maybe test the waters a little bit to work out. If I mention this, what is the general response to this? Right, because that can give you an indication as to actually, is this a psychologically safe space for me to show that aspect of myself? So again, if you're neurodiverse, if you're from the LGBTQ plus communities, I think it's really important that you understand how to sort of work out ways you can protect yourself in a way where you don't feel exposed. I think it's really important.
Yeah, really important.
Hugely,
Thank you. And you've kind of answered this really partly. How can you be authentic then if you are worried about how your authenticity will be received, or is that a problem in itself?
I mean, I wish we were in a world where you don't have to worry about, am I being authentic or can I be authentic or not? That's my ideal. That's the idealist in me, right? Yes. But the reality is, you know, I brought it back down to actually what's important to you. And what do you have choice over? And you have choice over what you bring to any environment. So again, what's important to you in that moment? Is it to be as authentic, 100% authentic, or actually it's not quite important right now, so I'm happy to stand back from this? But in an environment where actually, you know, I feel great about it, all the signs are there, then absolutely, like, this is me. Right, so I think it's important to sort of work out, you know, how to work out what environments or communities you can do that around, and then
like you say, test the water, maybe. Thank you.
And I think there's also just playing into people's expectations. So, as a coach, if I'm coaching my corporate clients, I do bring my heels. I do bring what they expect to see because I get a better response from them. I get a more open, honest, we are able to get into that conversation straight away rather than if I turn up in my trainers or something like just because it's not, I guess I don't see that as fully masking, but just knowing what the expectation is and how that person is more able to respond. It allows me to do my job better. So there is that nuance that's just so interesting. And I love your honesty about masking because we almost now see masking as a bad thing, whereas actually it can be a really effective tool in the right circumstances.
100%.
Gosh. Oh my goodness. Yinka, we are keeping you, and in fact we are handing over Business Boost to Yinka today, so let's head over.
So if you want to do a little bit of a test on actually how you're feeling about your career, and maybe if you're in the right career as well, actually check with using 3 emojis. So maybe it's a heart, and so you love your career, amazing, but maybe it's also, you know, things are quite hot on at the moment, so maybe you've got a bit of a sweating emoji. But then, you know, if things are not going so great, a number 2 emoji might be one that you consider as well. So if that's what it is, then that's absolutely fine, but that's almost just to give you a sense check as to how you're feeling about your career.
When we want to make like a change in our lives, it can be a little daunting because big changes come with big challenges. And sometimes you're gonna feel isolated, like nobody understands you, your friends don't get it, the people around you don't understand what you're doing, they start mocking you, and you feel completely alone. So what I want you to bring your attention to is, if you're clear on what you want, just push through. This is going to be probably what I call your personal desert. It's an inhospitable place. It's lonely. It's not welcoming. It's difficult. You have to really push through. But if you just persist, you're gonna get to your first of many oases. And when you get there, you're gonna look around and you're gonna see people that think like you, that respect your values, that love you and like you for who you are. So you no longer have to make the effort to fit in. You can just be and belong.
Well, welcome to the last part of the show. Today has flown by.
It really has.
It's just been such a deep conversation with so many nuances uncovered, probably leaving me with more questions than I ever had before, but I think that's a really good thing. Yeah. So thank you, Yinka. You've been just marvellous.
Fascinating.
What are some of the things you're going to take away? I mean, there's so much.
There's so much, but I think the biggest thing is that it never occurred to me before that an individual choosing their career and someone as yourself kind of helping them might have to take into account everything and everybody around them. Yeah. That's such a huge thing, but of course it does. And actually, I can think of a family member who's having to do exactly that, because her previous career, she was working long hours and she had to change because she's looking after her mother, and so she needed to find a career that would still pay her enough, but so she has the time to look after her mother. So I can see that working in a small way, but yeah, you're talking about whole communities being taken into account. So that's kind of what's really...
And I'd echo that, because it was what you said. If you're changing career, we're all changing career. and actually, when you look at that from the point of view of the person you're coaching, what a responsibility.
Yeah, it's huge.
Which they may not even voice, because without you being so explicit about that, I don't think I would have thought about that explicitly. No, I wouldn't. Even though probably, the minute you said it, you just go, of course.
It makes sense. But it's not something that we would necessarily think about. Because I think changing career is such a huge leap of faith anyway, and a huge responsibility and a huge weight just on that one person. To then have that one person have to factor in everybody else and how it will impact on them.
And then if that one person's from a culture where community is the key rather than the individual, you're suddenly in all kinds of extra pressures. Yinka, you've just been so incredible. We'd like to hand it over to you to do the top tips to improve, I guess, our approach to intersectionality.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is listen. I think it's, as a coach, that's always the first thing that's sort of drummed into us, really. Listen to your clients. So yes, organisations, listen to your employees. But also I think compassion as well, I think, is essential within this. I think it can't be understated how emotional a career change can actually be, and therefore the impact on the well-being as well. So I think with organisations that are supporting their staff with changing careers, whether it's due to a restructure or new initiatives or organisational priorities, actually factor into the change, how people have to adjust to that and have compassion for that process. And then the final thing I would like to share, or the top tip, I guess will be for the individuals themselves, and this is to make them aware that your reason for your career change is always valid. So even in those moments where it actually feels like, why am I doing this? Or, am I good enough? Or will this next opportunity be what I think it is? Actually, yes. And I think you owe it to yourself a little bit to explore that, so you can actually sort of tick that off the checklist and know, actually, I've explored that as much as I possibly can. So that's what I'd like to leave.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Yinka. Because that last point in particular, so many people return to their old careers because of fear. They don't explore it fully because they find a few closed doors and that's it. I go back to what I'm safe with. Yes. And I think that's so important. So it's just been brilliant having you here. Where can we learn more about you?
Yes, so you can find me on LinkedIn. So that's Yinka Adesina, so I'll spell that out. So it's Yinka and then Adesina. You can find me on there. I'm also on Instagram, and that's on Yinka Careers, so with an S at the end, all one word. And yeah, have a look to see what I get up to, and yeah, that's it.
Amazing. We'll definitely put those notes with our show when this airs. So thank you so much. And from all of us here at Mental Health Matters Office Hours, have a healthy week.